In this lesson, we'll be looking at doing some graphing on some coordinate grids and reviewing that vocabulary and giving you a couple of situations to graph. So, first of all, I want to make sure that you are okay with all the terminology that is associated with this. So, I want you to be able to identify the x-axis. And the x-axis goes this way. And so this right here is the x-axis. Right there. That line is the x-axis. I am just going to label it. Okay, and then of course the y-axis is the one that goes this way. You've probably heard the term y to the sky so that you can remember which axis goes which way. And so this is your y-axis. The origin is also known as the point 0, 0. So this point right here is the origin. It is the point 0, 0. It's where we start measuring everything from. Then you have an ordered pair. This right here is an ordered pair. And the ordered pair, of course, is represented by how you move along the x-axis and then how you move along the y-axis. Yeah. Okay. Then, these are probably new words to you, maybe or maybe not, but the independent variable is the x variable, and the dependent variable is the y variable. And I will talk about this more when we get into some real situations here in a couple of minutes, but the independent is the one that stands alone, can do it itself. You don't need to know anything else before you know it. That's the independent. The dependent obviously depends on something else. You can't figure it out unless you know something else. Okay? That's the dependent, and we'll talk more about that as we go here. All right, here's some real life situations. You work 15 hours a week and you make $7 an hour. Okay? Now, I'm going to kind of ask you some guided questions because it's sort of hard to determine what's the independent variable and dependent variable. People have the hardest time with this. Okay? So if you are frustrated, you are normal here. You work 15 hours per week. So there's two things going on here. How many hours a week you work and how much money you make. Okay? Those are the key things. How many hours a week you work and how much money you make. Here's what I want you to think about. So, I can figure out how much money I made. I made $7 an hour and I worked 15 hours a week. So I can figure out that I can take 15 times 7 and know how much money I made. But what if I worked 10 hours next week? Would I make the same amount of money? What if I worked 7 hours one week? Would I make the same amount of money? I wouldn't. Every time I do this, I'm going to make $7 an hour, but I can't know how much money I'm going to make until I know how many hours I worked. I know I'm going to get paid $7 an hour every single time, but I can't know how much money I make until I know how many hours I worked. So, what's dependent, what I can't figure out unless I know something else, is how much money I make. I can't figure out how much money I make unless I know how many hours are worked. Okay, so my independent would be the hours worked, and my dependent would be how much money I made. Here's another one. There's 180 calories in a can of Mountain Dew. So one variable is the amount of calories that you're consuming, and another variable is how many cans you drink. So if I said to you, all right, you're drinking Mountain Dew, how many calories did you consume today? You might say to me, well, I don't know. How many cans do you think I drank? And if you drank 3 cans, you'll take 180 times 3. But if you drank 5 cans, you'd have to take 180 times 5. And if you drank 1 can, so the thing that is constant here is that there's 180 calories in a can. That is true. But I won't know how many calories I've consumed until I know how many cans I drank. Okay? So I cannot figure out how many calories I've consumed. That's my dependent. The calories depends on how many cans you drank. Okay? Here's another one. As you study more for your math test, your test grades increase. So this is a little loose. It's not totally 100% true statement, probably. But again, I won't know what grade I'm going to get until I know how much I have studied. Okay? Can't figure out a grade until I know how much I've studied. All right, here is a real life situation. This represents the median income of United States families. Okay, so the middle income of U.S. families. Um, I want you, first of all, to identify the independent and the dependent variable. And obviously, income is changing as time passes because there's inflation and there's all that good stuff. So I can't really figure out what my income's going to be until I know how much time has passed. So in this case, your income is your dependent variable, and your year or your time is your independent variable. Okay? Your dependent variable always goes along the y-axis, and your independent variable always goes along the x-axis. That can't change. Okay? And again, I won't know my income until I know how much time has passed. So when I do this, first of all, every time you make a graph for me, I want you to give me a title. So the title in this case I would call median income of United States families. Okay? Then, like I said, the independent variable, the independent one has to go on the x-axis. In this case, the independent variable is time, or what year it is. Okay? The dependent variable always goes along the y-axis. So in this case, we're talking about money. Okay? All right, now we want to look at the data that we've been given and kind of figure out how to scale these. So our years go from 1970 all the way up to 2005. And a common mistake people will make is they'll just take these years and they'll go along the x-axis and they'll label the first line as 1970, the next line is 1980, the next line is 1985. You can't do that. Your x and your y-axes need to be scaled evenly, okay? So like there's a 10-year jump here, there's only a 5-year jump here. So you can't just sit and label your x-axes as 1970, 1980, 1985, 1990. That doesn't work. You have to scale them accurately, or scale them appropriately. Okay, so I'm going from 1970 all the way up to the year 2005. So that's 35 years. I probably can take that 35 years and go every 5 years. So I will call this spot right here 1970, and then if I go 5 years, this would be 75, 80, 85, 90. Okay. Then your income, when you do these, you guys, you have to start at 0. I'm just telling you that. Your y-axis has to start at 0. Your x-axis does not. Your y-axis has to start at 0 or you will distort the graph. So I know sometimes people like to put those little skips in there or whatever. You cannot do that. You have to start at 0. So your income in this case has to go from 0 all the way up to 57,000. Okay, so from 0 to 57,000, let's round that off to 60,000. You have to go from 0 to 60,000. I think you can go up by 10,000s. So let's say this is 0, and this is the hardest part to this for people is scaling the x-axis. 0, 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, 40,000, 50, and 60. Okay. Now what you're going to do is you're going to graph the ordered pair. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to realize that I'm going to make an ordered pair out of 1970 and $9,867. So I'm going to graph this ordered pair. So I'm going to find 1970 along my x-axis, that's right here. And then I'm going to go up $9,867. So I'm going to be almost at $10,000. Okay, then my next ordered pair, if you look at your chart, is 1980. So make sure you go over to 1980 and then 21,023. So 21,023, a little over 20,000 in the 1980 column. 1985 and 27,735 would be right about there. 1990 and 35,353. You're having to estimate a little bit, I know. 95 and 40,600 and something. 98, so be careful here. 98 is going to be like right about here along your x-axis. 1998 and 46,737, so right about there. And then 2005 and 57,000 something. Okay, so this is kind of what your graph would look like. We are not going to connect the dots because I don't really know what's happening in the years in between. I don't even know if they measured median income in the years in between. Then it says describe the relationship, and this is what I want you to say. Over time, the U.S. family median income is rising. So as time passes, the median income rises. I want you to tell me as what's happening on the x-axis, this is what's happening on the y-axis, okay? As time passes, that's what's happening on the x-axis. Income rises. That's what's happening on the y-axis. All right. Then in this next one, and this is a little tricky here, but this is what's happening. You want to join Lucky's Fitness Center, you have to pay $150 along with $36 per month. First of all, you need to make a table that's going to show you the cost of the fitness center membership. So you won't know how much you're going to pay until you know how many months you have to pay for. So this is the number of months, and this would be the cost. So here's what I want you to be careful of in this case. If you go to the club 0 months, so in other words, you just sign up and you never go to the club, but you sign up, okay, you still have to pay that $150 initiation fee. Then if you go for 1 month, you have to pay that $150 plus $36 for that month. So that would be $186. If you go 2 months, you would pay $150 plus 36 times 2. Okay? So $222. If you go 3 months, you pay $150 plus 36 times 3, which is $258. If you go 4 months, 150 plus 36 times 4. If you go 5 months, it's 150 plus 36 times 5. And if you go 6 months, 150 plus 36 times 6. Looks like that. Okay? Again, I don't know how much my membership is going to cost until I know how many months I have been there. So the cost would be the dependent variable, and the number of months would be the independent variable. I can control the number of months. I can't control the cost, so that's why it's dependent. Again, you need a title. I would call it something like this. Your independent variable has to go on your x-axis. In this case, it's the number of months. And of course, your dependent variable will go on the y-axis, which in this case would be the cost, but it's not showing me. There we go. So that's what this would look like. Okay. Again, tricky part, scaling your axes. So number of months, in this case, it's all pretty flat. And it just is going to go 0 month, 1 month, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months. Your cost is going to go from 150 up to 366, but remember your y-axis must start at 0. So you actually have to go from 0 all the way up to 366. So you want to think about what you're going to scale that by. I don't have many things to jump up by, so if I have to go from 0 up to 366, I probably can go up by 50s. So I will go 50, 100, 150, 200, 250, 300, 350, 400 should fit on there. All right? And then I'm just going to plot those points. So I have the point 0 and 150 according to my chart. Then the next spot over on my chart, month 1 and $186. Month 2 and $222. Month 3 and $258. Month 4 and $294. Month 5 and $330. And month 6 and $366. And that's what your graph would look like. Okay? So again, when you make a statement, I want you to tell me something that's happening on the x-axis and something that's happening on the y-axis. So here we go. After the initial cost, the total cost increases by equal amounts each month. Or you would say, as the number of months pass, the total membership cost increases. Okay? And that should do it.